So, you know, those of you who have watched my videos know that I've talked ad nauseum and read my books. It's all about the different types of narcissism and how they manifest. It does seem like there's going to be some similarities and differences on the basis of the type of narcissist we're dealing with. Something I've always wanted to bring home to everyone is the type of narcissist someone is often has a lot to do with the kind of day they're having. And by that I mean, any narcissist who's having a good run of it, they're making a lot of money, they got the stuff they want, they're getting the people they want, most importantly, they're getting the validation and the supply they want, more often than not are going to present as grandiose narcissists. Life's going their way. And so, but some people just tend to be more of the grandiose narcissistic type, and that's their baseline, okay? We know that in general, people who are narcissistic have empathy deficits, they're deeply entitled. The grandiose narcissists are obviously quite grandiose. They're arrogant, they have a propensity for rage, they do not regulate disappointment well, they're chronically seeking admiration, they're seeking validation, they are superficial, and they have not only difficulty regulating their emotions, but they're also incredibly sensitive in the face of criticism. They can dish it out, but they can't take it. The presentation of the grandiose narcissist then becomes someone who really is sort of like that person, that kind of, it can feel sleazy salesman-like, it can be like I am the king of the world-like, it can be I've got all the answers, it can be annoying guy on the bar stool, or annoying gal on the bar stool. All of that said, what are the leading tips you have with, especially in a divorce setting, of how to negotiate with a grandiose narcissist?
Well, so the grandiose narcissist is going to do everything they can to keep control of the situation. So the first thing they're going to try to do is try to get rid of your lawyer in some way, because your lawyer is the person who is now between the narcissist and the person who they want to control. And the lawyer now becomes the enemy, because that's the person who's going to actually maybe expose the narcissist for who or what they are, or maybe be between them and them getting the deal that they want, or that they think that they should have. And so they're going to try to get the person to meet at Starbucks. Let's just meet at Starbucks, you know, we don't need lawyers, you know, so that's the thing that they're going to do.
Okay.
And they're going to say your lawyer is just after the money. I've heard that, you know, he or she, whatever it is that they can possibly dream up and say, that's what they're going to say, because they want you to get rid of the lawyer. So this is what I tell people all the time is, you have three choices. You can stay with this person and stay married to them, which I don't recommend.
But I've got, you know me, y'all can read my book, and I got a whole bunch of videos telling you how to stay if you need to stay, because some people have to stay.
Well, I don't recommend in the long run. I mean, if you have to stay for kids or you have reasons or whatever, but in the long run, you probably want to work this person out of your life. Number two is to take exactly what they want you to take with your pat on the head and walk away. But we already talked about that. Even if you choose door number two, it's going to be a shifting thing. It's never going to be exactly, because if they think that you're just taking what they're offering, then they're like, well, maybe I should offer less or whatever, because they just want to mess around with you. And then door number three is, you know, you're going to have to fight up against this person. So, you know, don't have those meetings alone, because you know that this person manipulates you. You know the person's a liar. You know that this person is going to say and do whatever they can to get what they want, or to manipulate you. So don't do it. Don't have those conversations. And what I recommend for people to do in those situations is just say, I don't know, I'm just talking to my lawyer. Blame it all on your lawyer. Let your lawyer be the fall person. You know, I don't know, I just want what's fair. I just want, you know, what my rights are, and I'm going to let the lawyer sort it out. That's what I suggest that people do.
So it's, I mean, in all of my work, working with individuals who are experiencing narcissistic abuse or in narcissistic relationships, my consistent, you know, don't move away from a position is realistic expectations and radical acceptance. this person, to the point you're now getting a divorce. Things have gotten so toxic. And I have to say, in narcissistic relationships, people let things get a lot more toxic than they would in another relationship where they simply grown apart from someone, because you've become so mentally confused. And with a grandiose narcissist, you're so used to being lorded over. You're so confused by the gaslighting. People are, and the grandiose narcissist plays that game really, really well. And you're burned out. So that idea of a Starbucks meeting is like, okay, fine. You're so exhausted. But then I say, realistic expectations, radical acceptance. This is a person who manipulates. It's who they are. It's what they do. It's just like a scorpion stings. A narcissist manipulates, and to have realistic expectations that all of a sudden, now that you filed for divorce, now they're going to become an angel. It's not how it's going to go down.
Oh, in fact, it's the opposite, because you no longer have value to that narcissist. In fact, you're a liability, because as long as you were still in that narcissist world and they thought that maybe you were for them in some way, or you have some value to them, then they're sort of measured a little bit more. But once you no longer have value, you are now the enemy. And so it is on. And they, I think in a subsequent video, we're going to talk more about all the different kinds of things that they do in a divorce setting. But, once you no longer have value to a narcissist, you are the enemy.
And I also have to say, too, though, with a grandiose narcissist, what people do need to be prepared for psychologically is it's not over, like, they're not just going to start fight. They're actually going to try love bomb sequence 2, love bomb sequence 3, because in some ways, it's not that they want you back. They may. A lot of times, grandiose narcissists care deeply about what they look like to the world. They want to look like the Christmas card. They want to be the happy family. They have a whole narrative around, I just want to be the happy family. This matters to me. And it's a whole shtick that they're selling to the world. So they want to keep that back, but it's also a game. It's, can I lure the rat out of its hole? Can I bring this person back out? It's what it was from the jump. That's what love bombing is.
I know how to call that bluff right away.
Which is?
Get them to sign a post-nup right now. Okay, you want me back? I'll come back. Sign a post-nuptial agreement.
That's great. Perfect. Now we know how they're typically going to react.
Of course, they're not going to say yes.
No, they're not going to.
So now you've called their bluff.
That's right. And they play on that vulnerability, and they say, really, a post-nup. So this really was just about money. And that's when the other person, the non-narcissistic person, who's already been so beaten down by this, who's already vulnerable to this, who already has issues around self-doubt, confusion, all the things that happen in narcissistic abuse, says, no, this wasn't about money, and they find themselves getting into the thickets and can often get pulled in. They want to seem noble. No, this was never about money. This was about you treating me with respect. And then I've seen many people at that point get sucked right back in with the grandiose narcissist.
You know what I say to that? What's wrong with it being about money? If you're entitled to it.
Right. And there's the difference between that lawyer and the psychologist.
If you're entitled to it, if the law provides that you're entitled to it, then don't be embarrassed about asking for what the law is providing for you.
But here, this is where I will take a slightly different stance as a psychologist. I think what a lot of people say is that, yes, it's about money. This is a marriage. Marriage is really a contract. Marriage really is a contract. Stop romanticizing it. It's a contract. But marriage is a contract that they are entitled to it. But I do think that people who have been in long-term relationships with grandiose narcissists, it is really about, can you please reflect on what you just did to me for the last 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30 years? You know what? They'd say, I'd walk away from $10 million. I
have the best story for you with that. The best story. So I was representing a guy who was number 2 in the largest development company in Florida. And, he was one of these narcissistic personality types who came in and, any room in your retainer and whatever. And I was like, no, but, if you want to go on down the road, fine. But but he was trying to get me to reduce my retainer. So we get to mediation, and it's like 9 o'clock at night, and we're all settled on everything, and he's agreed to pay her around $250,000 a year in alimony and he was like 55 years old. So just for easy math, it's at least for the next 10 years, because when you retire at 65, you could potentially ask for a modification. But so we're talking about $2.5 million, okay? We're getting ready to sign. Mediator comes into my office and says, or to the conference room where I was with my client, and says, I need to talk to you. I have a very unusual request, but I want to run it past you before I run it past your client. So he pulls me aside and says, the wife says that she will waive alimony, waive $2.5 million, if he apologizes to her for how he treated her during the marriage. And guess what? He didn't want to do it.
And there it is. See? So what I'm telling all of you, there it is. You know? So yeah.
I made him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm like, yes, you will. Get over there. And so he went over there and apologized, and she waived alimony, and that was that. But that was worth more to her.
Right.
And she knew also that he wouldn't want to do it.
Right, and so here's where it's, again, I'm going to put the psychologist hat on here, which is, there is something unsatisfying about that. He didn't want to apologize. It wasn't a real apology. And one thing we do know in the world of narcissism is a narcissist apology is it's worthless. It's less than worthless. It's the gum on your shoe because it's manufactured. It's somebody saying, just for $2.5 million, say sorry. That's not an apology. That's a, you know,
From my perspective as his attorney, I'm like,
right,
all day long.
Exactly.
As her attorney, I'd have been like, you're not asking for that. No way.
Right. And as her psychologist, I say, you just bought yourself another 10 years of healing because that wasn't an apology. I think that the struggle becomes, you know, and again, this is where it's interesting to have the lawyer talk to psychologists, is that when the apology feels not authentic, the person says, you know, what was that? And I'll say it was nothing. It was, you know, it was window dressing. It's very difficult for a narcissistic individual to apologize because of the shame factor, because of the insecurity factor, because of the lack of capacity for them to exercise empathy, right? What he does, that client of yours, he doesn't believe he caused her pain.
Right.
He doesn't. He just wanted his money.
Right.
Okay? She was in pain and the other person didn't acknowledge it. It's looking into the mirror that doesn't look back. And that's there, to wit, is the conundrum where I might say, okay, if you know, I would tell somebody, get the money, then at least you can get the therapy. Because,
exactly.
You know, that's,
I mean,
yeah.
Hey, from my perspective as his lawyer, my job was to advocate for him.
Right.
So it wasn't my job to say no to that.
Right.
It was my job to say, get your butt in there and apologize.
Right, right. Yes.
I mean, you know, because that's the kind of thing that he would have come back to me on later and said, why didn't you make me?
That's right. And exactly, and blame you. But my job is to tell that woman, you didn't get a real apology. What can we learn from this relationship?
I'm sure she probably regretted it.
Maybe, who knows what her financial situation was, you know? Maybe, who knows what I don't know her mindset is, but at the end of the day, I would have said, you know, how do we help you learn from this so you never pick someone like this again? You know, that's really what it is.
Because
how do we learn from this? People do
yeah.
pick. So, you know, just as a twist here, because we do talk about, while the grandiose narcissist is the most common, the one we see the most, there are these other subtypes, what we often call the covert or vulnerable narcissists. This is what I often view as the more victimized narcissist. When you meet them, they're often a little bit more sad, they're softer, they're not as in your face. In fact, a lot of people want to rescue covert narcissists. They're like, if this person just got a break, they'd be fine. What they don't realize is right under the surface is this tremendous amount of contempt.
Yes.
Contempt for other people, contempt that other people have it easier, contempt that life didn't go on, jealousy and envy and all of these kinds of emotions. And the insecurity in the covert/vulnerable narcissist is much greater.
Yes.
Would you say then, are there any other unique elements of negotiation then that come up with covert narcissists?
Well, so they're not going to be as in your face, and it's not going to be as obvious to the divorce lawyers or to the judge. So the judge might say, oh, this poor person, and fool everybody. And especially because the covert narcissist tends to be more passive aggressive. And so it's easier to explain away the things that they will do, you know, so they might, you know, inadvertently send an email to somebody, oh, oops, it was an accident. And you know that it wasn't an accident because you've been living with this person for years. So they're much more adept at hiding the kinds of things that they're doing. So in my opinion, they're actually more toxic in a lot of ways.
Can be, yeah, absolutely.
Because it's going to be harder to get the system and the people in the system to understand the personality type that you're dealing with. If you're having a parental evaluation or a custody evaluation done, they may fool that psychologist.
Absolutely.
Because they're going to say, oh, I'm such a victim, and this other person was so horrible to me, and I can never catch a break, and I want to work, but I'm so sick all the time, and I always feel terrible, and so they're actually much more difficult in the divorce setting, and they'll still do the same kinds of things. This triangulation is a biggie with covert narcissists. Let's get the whole world on my side. Let's get everybody to see how much of a victim I am and how horrible this other person is. And they're actually very good at getting the person.
Yes, they are.
Getting people to believe them.
And leaving the person who has been victimized by them looking like a bad guy.
Right.
This person actually has been enduring so much when you've been in a relationship with a covert narcissist, and everyone's like, why are you being so hard on him or her? What? Well, come on, cut. And there's a lot of gaslighting by other people that happens in these relationships, where, especially when it's careening towards a divorce. So it's definitely a very, very toxic dynamic. So when a person is in a divorce or in any form of negotiation with a covert narcissist, then what?
Well, it's the same kind of thing. You're going to have the same sort of thing. I mean, they're going to probably obstruct you. They're not going to give over information. They're going to put up roadblocks at every chance that they can. They're going to manipulate everything that you say, but they're just going to do it in a way that's more under the radar and harder for you to bring to people's attention, because when you bring what they're doing to people's attention, it's the kind of thing where people go, well, that's not that bad. Or that was probably just a mistake.
Yes, exactly. Gaslighting.
Yes, exactly. So, whereas an overt narcissist or the grandiose narcissist,
you can see it.
It's much more manipulative. You can actually see it right in the email chain. It's easier to follow the email chain and go, well, okay, here you go.
Would you argue maybe it's a different form of manipulation? Because I think passive aggressiveness is at its core manipulation, right?
100%.
It's the attempt of, maybe it's not even an active attempt, but it is the induction of negative emotion in another person, typically guilt, to mobilize action on their part, not because the other person wants to do something, but they're doing it to stave off this sense of guilt.
And it's absolutely just as traumatic for the victim.
Yes. Yeah,
100%.
manipulation's manipulation. I mean, I don't care if it's in your face, I don't care it's through a passive-aggressive back door, it definitely leaves people sort of reeling. So this takes us then to one last form of narcissism I want to get to, because I think it's worth mentioning because it's more dangerous, which is malignant narcissism. There are researchers out there that view malignant narcissism as sort of like that space in the middle where more of a grandiose narcissistic style meets like a low-grade psychopathy, meets this sort of really Machiavellian, manipulative, political, very skilled, working other people's style. Malignant narcissists are where we're going to see your CEO types, we're going to see your world leader types, we're going to see people at the top who are able to charm you, then go chew someone else out, then go destroy someone else's life, and then go charm someone else. Like their ability to just sort of do that leaves everyone confused, and they've usually charmed the right people, including people like judges. They're that good. Whereas the covert narcissist ain't charming anyone. Even the grandiose narcissist gets a little bit nervous during a divorce. A malignant narcissist is very cool under stress.
Yeah, it's harder to get them unglued.
Yes, it is. It is, and they can be dangerous. I mean, we have been talking about negotiating a divorce thus far from a perspective of not from a violence perspective. Now remember, abuse in a relationship can take many forms. The majority of clients I work with are dealing with severe psychological abuse, which to me is every bit, perhaps even more traumatic than physical abuse. And it also
100%.
Includes things like stalking, coercive control, financial
no
abuse.
boundaries.
Yeah, so all that things, the financial, the control, all of it. It's a disease that overtakes the person, and they realize they're literally living in a prison when they're in a relationship with a malignant narcissist. It can escalate to danger, and in the cases I've consulted on where a person's divorcing a malignant narcissist, we have to come up with a safety plan. And that's where I've worked with people who have expertise in domestic violence on having a go bag and how do you set that up and how do you, I mean, we're teaching people to clear out the search histories on computers and stuff. I mean, in the electronic age, in some ways,
also save
it's
the
hard.
things that they need to save.
Save what you need to save. Clear out what you don't want to do. Go to libraries,
Change
use
your
other computers,
passwords.
change
I
your
tell people
passwords.
that all the time.
Right.
Yep.
I mean, this is a different territory. Is there any other thoughts when you're negotiating with someone who, if not full on dangerous, like going to really do physical harm to you, is always menacing? They send that menacing email. There's something almost stalky about them. It doesn't relent. Emails at 3 in the morning. I mean, these are the clients I work with who are the most wrecked. I mean, they are in a post-traumatic stress state almost all of the time.
Yeah. And they have no boundaries. So, I mean, they'll just show up at your house. They'll do whatever they need to do, whatever they want to do. So, first of all, let me just say, and I tell my clients this all the time, if you feel that you are in danger, please call the police. You know, don't call your lawyer. Your lawyer can't do anything right away. So, you know, a lot of times I hear people saying, how is he or she getting away with this? And it's a very common thing. And so let me just inject reality into that statement really briefly. And that is that there are no divorce fairies that linger around people's houses and come jumping out of the wall when somebody misbehaves.
Exactly right.
So how are they getting away with this? Remember, the only person that has any power over anyone else in our society is the judge. That is it. There's law enforcement if you break the law. If you do something criminal, you can call the police. Other than that, it's the judge. Those are the only avenues of getting someone to behave. That's it. So when you're dealing with somebody who is menacing and maybe unsafe or stalking, then you have to call the police, because most states, in order to get any kind of an injunction, so if you want to get some kind of injunction against the person, or I guess in regular word terms, it's a restraining order or something like that, you have to be able to show that you're in danger. You have to be able to show. You can't just say, I'm scared of this person, because this person has civil rights, they have constitutional rights, they have to have notice and opportunity to be heard and all of that sort of thing. And so call the police if you think that you're in danger. It will only help you get that restraining order down the road if you decide that that's what you want. The worst possible thing that you can do is go try to get a restraining order and then it doesn't stick, because now the person feels empowered. So you have to be really, really careful about making sure that if you're going to go that route, that it's going to stick and you're going to get it.
But also, let's warn people that once you get a restraining order, the likelihood of violence skyrockets.
Well, because they're
Yes, but that's the reality check. I don't want people to think restraining orders are an answer. I think they're a step, but they're a step that put people in danger, and that's the nature of how our system works. So I think to say that I mean, the number of people I listen to,
I have a lot of people ask about them. So the only other path is some kind of a civil order, which would be, exclusive occupancy of your house or something like that. And, those things you can get, but they take time.
Yes, they do.
So you have to, what the lawyer's power is to file a motion, set the motion for hearing in front of the judge. Then, and all the judges are very backed up. The judicial system is extremely backlogged. And so it takes a while to get a hearing.
Yes, it does.
And then once you get that hearing, newsflash, the judges don't always rule right away, which is really frustrating too. And so sometimes you're waiting weeks, months. I've even waited months for an order from that judge. So how is he or she getting away with this? Well, the only way you can rein in the behavior is by creating enough leverage in order to get that person to come to a table and potentially have a resolution with you, or get enough leverage that you can convince the judge to order things to go your way.
Right, which is hard. And again, in the populations I deal with, I deal with the people where things didn't go their way. And too many women who are beaten up or killed because the restraining order came, that inflamed the violence, can't, I mean, you know, it's a nice idea, and law enforcement has more leverage. So it really opens up this whole issue of these are complicated issues. And, you know, in the bottom line, and I think one of the most painful things I've heard is the number of clients who've worked with me who've said, this person is a bad person. They should not be raising these kids. Like, you know, and again, it's usually not even the money piece. Like and they'll still be upset. Like, I don't know how you expect me to do all this with this little bit of money, but how can you let this person half the time raise children? And I'm telling you, as somebody who's worked with these families, I have seen the majority of narcissists I've worked with got 50% custody.
Yeah, because
50% custody.
Yeah.
And let me tell you this, there's no happy ending to this. Children are destroyed.
Well, here's what happens a lot of times in the negotiation for that, and especially in states where child support is tied to time sharing.
Yes.
Which a lot of states it is. Some states it's not, but most states it is.
Yeah.
And so what they do, especially if they're the moneyed spouse, is they go for time sharing because then they pay less in child support.
That's right.
And a lot of times, though, they end up not taking it, which means that the non-moneyed spouse isn't getting the full amount of support,
and still with the kids.
They have the kids all the time.
Right. Which, again, I understand what you're saying, that this is a right of the child, but I always advise clients, I say, anytime they try to blow you off, and blow off the kids. Like, they got the kids 50% of the time, so they didn't have to give you the money. That's why they fought for it. They didn't want the kids. They wanted the money, okay?
But
now,
it's also, though, the facade of I got my kids 50% of the time. Because they don't want to tell the world that they didn't want their kids.
Right, they don't want to tell the world, but they don't want their kids.
No, but they want the show that they got 50%.
Right, so after the show is proven, and they can walk around saying they want 50%, they're always trying to foist the kids on the other partner, 100%. To which I tell the other partner, who's usually the one I'm working with, take them. They're like, but this is unjust. I'm like, this whole thing is unjust. Didn't you say you want to be with your kids 100% of the time? Anytime they give them, take them, because the less time those kids are spending with the narcissistic parent, probably the healthier for your kids. Now, what does end up happening is that they're not often getting the requisite additional money that more time would take. They figure it out. But I'd say if you can get the time with your kids, get the time with your kids.
Okay, so a little strategy here as far as during a divorce. If the divorce is taking several months, which a lot of them do, then give the narcissist 50% of the time during the temporary period, because you will give them rope to hang themselves that way. Because then by the time you get to that final hearing or you get to the mediation, you've now kept a log, which I tell everybody, keep a log.
Oh, so do I. Yes.
So you've now kept a log that shows that this person showed up late, didn't take them, asked you to take them, blah, 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 because they can't help being themselves. They're not going to take the kids 50% of the time, even during that 9-month or 1-year period. You will have lots and lots of times that they asked to change the schedule. They showed up late, blah, blah, blah. And so now you have that leverage. Now you have the information that you need in order to push for the custody arrangement that you want.
Okay, it's a great point. I mean, again, we probably talked for 17 hours on this because we've seen it from both sides of it, and it is interesting, like, to watch that. I say exactly that is you have to keep the most detailed log. I said it's almost like you're keeping records and charts the way a physician would, like days, hours, you
I've
name
won
it.
entire cases on those.
Yes, I'm sure that's good, and I hope you heard that. She's won entire cases on those. You can't do this after the fact. You have to do this in real time. You're not going to be able to even construct it a week later. In real time, it has to become a daily practice that you're logging this stuff. It's difficult, it's painful, it's uncomfortable. You must do it. It's part of your healing, but it's also part of your strategy.
Just open a notes thing in your calendar or your phone, or use an app. There are apps just for taking notes for that. I mean, so just get into the habit of logging it real time.
So today I'm going to explore the even darker side of narcissism. Like, narcissism isn't dark enough already, but the darker underbelly, those really seriously ugly side of narcissism, the malignant narcissist. That's the scariest form of narcissist, and we're going to dive in today in finding out what a malignant narcissist looks like and how to protect yourself. A malignant narcissist isn't just a narcissist. A regular narcissist has a very fragile sense of self. They have no sense of internal value. They try to grab all of their feeling of value from the external. They might devalue, debase others. They might beef up their own accomplishments. A malignant narcissist isn't just like your regular narcissist. A regular narcissist has no inner sense of value. They have no inner sense of self. They're very fragile. They have very fragile egos, and they're entirely driven by everything external. So they need an endless amount of supply. And supply can be anything in the form of compliments, money, tangibles, big job, big car, the right friends, living in the right neighborhood, anything that makes them look good on the outside. But supply can also be in the form of the abusive behavior, which is devaluing people, debasing people, judging people, putting people down, all that sort of thing. And all narcissists have very little sense of inner self, or none. And I've often said in my other videos that they're like the chocolate hollow Easter bunny. They might kind of look good on the outside, but there's absolutely nothing inside. And that's what's going on with a narcissist. So all narcissists have that. So, whether you're a grandiose narcissist or a covert narcissist, you're going to have these traits. And if you want to know more about covert narcissists, then you're going to want to check out my video on the covert passive aggressive narcissist. How a malignant narcissist differs, however, is that this is where antisocial, dangerous behavior mixes with your regular garden variety narcissist. So you've got your fragile ego, and you've got your little, sense of no sense of internal value, and you've got this person who's, very much trying to make themselves look as good as possible, but it's also overlaid with an antisocial personality, a person who is extremely suspicious, who is potentially aggressive and potentially dangerous. This is the person that will stop at nothing to destroy. Like seriously destroy families, destroy careers, destroy homes, destroy, work environments, and potentially even countries or nations, depending on, what kind of position of power they're in. But they literally have that need for, it's such a need for control and such a deep-seated rage and hatred inside of themselves that they're not just trying to fill themselves with endless amounts of narcissistic supply, which is what most narcissists do. They're also, they have this antisocial personality disorder overlay, and so they literally have the power to destroy people. So what you'll see with a malignant narcissist is they get themselves into a position of power, whether it's within the family dynamic or within a work environment or a company environment or anything like that. And then everybody around them is constantly walking on eggshells to not upset this person. And so, they have the ability to be triggered so easily. You've heard the term hair trigger. These people have a very, very, very sensitive hair trigger, and any little thing can trigger them to blow up, go crazy, and completely try to obliterate somebody for the smallest little infraction. They can just go nuts on someone because they didn't staple something the right way, or they didn't, hang the towel the way they were supposed to. They'll absolutely lose it. These people can come across as impulsive, destructive, aggressive, unstable, and what really sets them off more than anything is any slightest little thing that looks to them to be, a besmirch to them in any way. So, for example, if you gave an opinion that differed from theirs, then, you are going to pay the price for that. You're going to have to look bad. And they think that they are like demonstrating confidence and making sure that everybody knows who's the powerful one by basically obliterating somebody for like the smallest little infraction. So this is a person that when other people are around them, people feel anxious. They feel intimidated by this person. They feel very extremely fearful of this person, extremely fearful of what they're going to do. And so when you combine this feeling of fear and intimidation, and then they have absolutely no empathy, because no narcissists have empathy for others. That's what makes them narcissists. And their suspiciousness and their aggression will cause a lot of destruction to people and can cause a lot of pain to people. If you think that you might be dealing with a malignant narcissist, give me a yes in the comments. So how a person might describe a malignant narcissist if they don't know that they're a malignant narcissist, they might say that they're jealous. They might say that they're petty. They might say that they're thin-skinned. They might say that they're punitive. They might say that they're angry, or that they're shallow, or that they have, they can be impulsive, that they have a tendency to lash out very quickly over very small things. They also can tend to be very cunning, very sly, very good at coming up with ways to hurt people in very sneaky ways. A malignant narcissist also tends to see the world in a very black and white way. So they're either smart or they're dumb. They're either rich or they're poor. They're either in or they're out. They're a loser or they're a winner. They just see things in very, very black and white ways. They also hold feelings of grandiose superiority. So they think that they can say things that completely aren't true at all, have no basis in fact whatsoever, and believe that the world around them will believe everything that they have to say, and nobody will question it, that it's true because they said that it's true. According to Campbell's Psychiatric Dictionary, malignant narcissism combines the characteristics of narcissistic personality disorder, or NPD, antisocial personality disorder, or APD, aggression and sadism, either toward others, self, or both, and paranoia. So if you think that you are dealing with a malignant narcissist, then I highly suggest that you figure out a way to get out of this relationship. This is the person who might have a tendency to engage in things like violence, stalking, threats of violence. They really will stop at nothing to destroy you. There's certain types of narcissists that are pretty heinous as well, but they're not going to go after you to the point of destroying you because they don't want themselves to also look bad. This is the type of narcissist that they'll just stop at nothing because they think that they'll be able to get away with it. They live in such a distorted world that they think that they'll be able to get away with it. So you really need to figure out a plan to get away from this person. If you're in a marriage with this person, start figuring out what you need to do to get out of the relationship with this person. And if you're not thinking of divorcing the narcissist, then you need to figure out a way that you can create some serious boundaries so that this person cannot continue to hurt you. And part of creating boundaries is going to be having ways that they can only communicate with you, in one way in, one way out, something like that. Or shutting off communication with them altogether would be the ideal way to go. But, you definitely need to start creating a plan for how you're going to get out of this relationship with this person, because these people cannot be rehabilitated. They will not get better. Don't make excuses for them. That's another way that you can start protecting yourself, is stop making excuses for them. Just understand that they're very sick individuals. They're mentally ill, and you can't help them. You can't help them, so you need to figure out a plan to get out of this relationship with this person.
Let's talk about 3 examples of narcissists who play the victim. And really, narcissists who play the victim are a form of covert narcissist. And if you want to know more about the covert passive-aggressive narcissist, you can definitely check out my video on that topic. And this is really my least favorite in a lot of ways, because I had to deal with a covert passive-aggressive narcissist as a business partner myself. So let's talk a little bit first about narcissists, and then let's talk about a covert passive-aggressive narcissist, because I think it's really important that you understand what we're talking about before we talk about these types of narcissists who play the victim. Okay, so a narcissist is a person who has no inner sense of value. This is a person who is really the most insecure person on the planet, of course. They have no inner sense of value. And because of that, I kind of liken it to a person who's like literally starving. They're starving for attention. They just need so much to have love and all of that. But it's almost like those receptors have closed in a way. It's like if a cell has receptors or something, it's like there's a damage that has been done and nothing can really go inside anymore. So it's not like you can love them and it'll go and penetrate. It's like they're starving, but you can't feed them. It's like this black hole in a way, but yet they're starving. They feel like they have to grab food wherever they can. And this food that they're trying to grab is what we call narcissistic supply. And they're trying to feed their ego with it all the time. Feed, 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 feed. They're going to try to feed it with external stuff. And, it's going to either come in the form of what I call quote unquote good things, which is kind of the external things that you see, like adulation, compliments, money, prestigious friends, prestigious jobs, all the things that you necessarily see. And then there's like what I call the dark underbelly of narcissistic supply, which is things that they wouldn't necessarily want people to see, which is the devaluing people, degrading people, treating people poorly. And they wouldn't necessarily want people to see that they treat people badly all the time. They know that they shouldn't necessarily do that. So usually they do that in private or whatever. We're going to get into this, the ones who play the victim here in a second. So those are, how they get their supply in a lot of ways. Okay. And then there's like the covert narcissist, the overt narcissist, all those sorts of things. Okay. And it is a bit of a spectrum. And when you're going to negotiate with them, which is what I focus on, it's a very special type of situation because it's not like a give and take the same way as when you're dealing with a normal, reasonable person. You can't have a situation the same way. You do have to deal with it in a very different way. Okay, so let's talk about these narcissists who play the victim. These are the ones who aren't the ones out there bragging and boastful, telling everybody how great they are. They are the ones that are much more tending to be what I call more passive aggressive. They seem more downtrodden. So the first one is, I'm not good enough. This is the one that's like, they're always putting themselves down. I'm not good enough to play that game, or I'm not good enough to go date that person, or I'm not good enough to go try out for the play, or to go apply for that scholarship, or whatever it is. But a lot of times, this particular narcissist is doing this because they are trying to get people to pay attention to them. And it's a way of manipulating. It's a way of manipulating people around them. And sometimes they do it to pit people against each other. And sometimes they do it to get people to feel guilty. Sometimes they do it to get people to not do things that they would normally do, or like have a life or whatever. So this is number one. the I'm not good enough narcissist. Number 2 is the you're the bad one. This is the super guilt trip one. So this is the one that is always on their high horse because maybe you cheated at one point or something. And so they get to lord that over you for the rest of your life. And because of that, they never have to ever look at anything that they ever did. One of the perfect examples I've seen of this is when I was practicing law and I practiced divorce law. I would see, for example, a situation where a husband would be, unfaithful. The wife would get to tell everybody that the husband had been unfaithful and the person was the bad one. And, she got to play the victim. But what she didn't mention was that, she had sex with the husband in like 5 years before that. And, that the husband, by the time he had been unfaithful, it was because she hadn't had sex with him in several years. And, should he have probably left the marriage long before that, maybe, and there's a lot of things that go into that. But, she got to play the victim because of that. And so, she got to be on her high horse because of that. And so she got to play the victim. He was the bad one. So that's number 2. Number 3 is the poor me narcissist. This is the one that uses their sob stories as a reason to not have a life, as a reason to never do anything with themselves, right? Like they constantly have attention for themselves because it allows them to continue to get attention that way. And, there is a payoff sometimes for being the victim. And, for those of you who are out there watching this, I want you to listen to this sometimes, because as long as sometimes you allow yourself to be the victim, or that you point the finger at the other person as being the villain, then that continues to have you be the victim. And I want you to remember, I'm not saying that you're the narcissist at all, by the way, but I'm just saying, don't continue to have yourself be a victim either. But I'm saying that sometimes people who keep themselves stuck in these situations are because they are narcissistic, and it's because they know that it keeps them having attention for themselves and they use it to be manipulative. And I know that there's somebody that, my husband and I have in our lives that, uses sickness and uses sob stories as a way of manipulating people in their lives, and uses it to manipulate friends and family and that sort of thing. And it's just not okay, especially when they use it as a way of passive aggression, uses it as a way of pitting people against each other. And that's what you see sometimes with narcissists. Here we go with the 5 most toxic kinds of people. All right, so number 1, the complainer. This is the person that is just going to drag you down. They just never are happy. Have you noticed that this person goes from relationship to relationship, and they always seem to have the same kinds of complaints about whoever it is that they're with? I mean, the same boyfriend, the same job, the same whatever. They're constantly complaining. They're always a victim, never can get anything right. And by the way, these complainers are usually covert narcissists, and they're usually passive aggressive. If you want to know more about a covert passive aggressive narcissist, I have a whole video on that. You can definitely check it out. I even have a whole video on covert narcissism in relationships. We can definitely check out, because I actually had a whole situation on that myself. I actually think that covert narcissists are the worst ones because they're like the stealthiest ones. But these are the complainers, and these are people that are so toxic because they're constantly unhappy. Like nothing anyone ever does is good enough, you know? I mean, you go out to a restaurant with them, they're unhappy. I've been there. Like I've had people like this in my family where everybody in the whole table, the whole party ends up having to get up and leave because they weren't happy with something that happened. This is not a good thing. You leave this person after being with them for a couple of hours and you just don't even feel good. You've been with these people before, right? You want to actually get up from being with people after a few hours and feel good. You want to feel lighter. You want to feel happy. That's what you want to think. That's what you want to feel. I remember somebody was talking about somebody and they were like, oh, when he walked into the room, you felt happier. And when he left the room, you felt sad. Like that's what you want to feel. That is not a person that when they came into the room, they were like bitching and moaning the whole time. No. So the complainer, you don't need that person in your life. That's a toxic person. The next type of a toxic person that you don't need in your life, number two, the competitor. You know this person. Like, no matter what you say, they got it either better than you or worse than you. You've been around this person, like, you got a cold. Oh, I got a cold. And it is like, I got a sore throat and I got a fever. And it's like, oh, okay. Yeah, I just said I had a cold. They got to be sicker than you. They got to be worse, way sicker than you. And you're just like, oh, I just said I had a cold. Never mind. Or you got to say, I'm like, excited about this opportunity that I have or something. They're excited about their opportunity and, whatever. And it's like, okay, great. I mean, recently I was telling somebody that I hadn't seen in a few years. They asked me what I was up to, and I was telling them, that I was doing this stuff on YouTube now or whatever, because they were just asking me what I was up to. And they had to go and tell me that they knew somebody else that was also on YouTube and had like way more subscribers and I was like, oh, that's great. There's just these people that always have to be competitive no matter what, even if it's the smallest thing. You can't have a normal relationship with somebody like that because you constantly feel that whatever it is that you're going to say is going to be either one up. It's not even just from themselves, it's somebody that they know or something else. It's just not comfortable. You just can't even have a comfortable conversation because they think that you're competing with them, even if you're not. And then that's uncomfortable because they're having this competition. And I mean, I know for myself, I'm thinking to myself, who's competing? I'm not, but they think that you are. It's not fun. It's toxic. And it just makes it, again, you want to be where you've left that person, you spent time, your time, which is precious, life is short, and you feel better. So that's number two. The third type of toxic person that you don't need in your life, the judger. This is a person who's constantly judging everything that you're doing, not only that you're doing, but that everybody else is doing too. This person's not good enough, or that person's doing this, or, everything is being judged all the time. I mean, even if they're judging something that's going on the news or on television, or, they're kind of constantly always, it's almost like they're looking down their spectacles or down their glasses. What's going on, right? This is a person who's definitely very insecure in themselves. So they want to prop themselves up. Again, very narcissistic thing to do, probably a very covert narcissistic thing to do.
Oftentimes it's a passive aggressive type of move. Oh, you've lost weight, you've got a ways to go, but you look better than you did, that kind of thing. Who needs that? So that's number 3. Number 4. Number 4 is even worse than the judger. Number 4 is the backstabber. If somebody is constantly backstabbing people, especially people that that other person thinks that person is their friend, that person is 100% backstabbing you. Because if you think that they're your friend and then they're backstabbing, somebody else that they think is your friend to you, that's not good. You don't want to do that. And that's really what that is flying monkey situation. That's smear campaign situation. That's a very, very narcissistic thing to do. Narcissists like to divide people. They like to make people be pitted against each other because that's how they make sure that people aren't aligned. They want to make sure that people aren't ganging up on them. So they divide people. And I do have a whole video, by the way, on how to shut down a narcissist smear campaign, something that you might want to check out if you are a victim of a narcissist smear campaign. If you do have that situation and you want to shut them down, you should definitely put that in the comments right now. Shut them down. Shut down toxic people. It's time to shut them down. And we come to the most toxic type of person. I saved the best for last, of course. The most toxic type of person, the one that we definitely nobody needs, because this is the one who's out of integrity, and without integrity, nothing works. So this is the one that no one needs. And so if you see this is massive red flag. This is the flag that you see and you just run away. This is the one where you go, no, thank you. I'll keep to myself. Thank you very much. The liar. The liar. Big narcissist move. Big toxic move. You don't need liars in your life. Remember how Maya Angelou said, when people show you who they are, believe them the first time. If somebody's a liar, they're a liar. And you can't go, well, they were having a hard time. They didn't mean it. Especially if it's a major lie. I mean, you really can't explain those kinds of things away. Don't allow liars in your life. Don't allow people in your life who are going to not have integrity, who don't have enough respect for you as a human being to tell you the truth, who don't have enough respect for your time to tell you the truth, because that wastes your time, your energy. No, liars are the worst, the most toxic. Those are the most toxic types of people. You don't need these people in your life. You need to shut them down, cut them out, go, goodbye. And there's enough good people in the world, people who are compassionate, have empathy, have integrity. When you raise your standards, you don't get your goals, you get your standards. And when you raise your standards, then you get good people in your life.
Now, if you are dealing with a narcissist, then that narcissist is probably driving you crazy, or actually maybe even feeling like insane. And you're thinking, is there any way to make them panic? Yes, there is. But first, let me just go through a couple of the things that they do to you, because it's important to understand that so that you can understand the flip side of it and what makes them panic. So a couple of their go-to things are things like gaslighting. Gaslighting is trying to make you think that you're crazy. And what they do is they'll say,
oh, we talked about that, or don't you remember that, or no, that's not how that went, something like that. And shifting what they said, shifting what you guys talked about, shifting what you said, so that it meets their agenda, which is to manipulate you and to make you think that you're crazy. So gaslighting is definitely one of their favorite tactics. Another one of their favorite tactics is lying. They are total pathological liars. The crazy thing I think about narcissists is that they'll lie about stuff that they don't even need to lie about. You think to yourself, why are you lying about that? You don't even need to lie about that. But the thing is that narcissists think that they need to manipulate everything. They don't believe that they can get anything just in a normal way. They feel like they have to lie. So they will lie about even things that are readily verifiable, which is the thing that's pretty crazy. And in a lot of my other videos, I talk about making sure that you document everything that you do, because they will eventually contradict themselves. They will eventually put things in writing that are completely contradictory to what is actually happening or what they have said before. Now, they'll have some explanation for it, but that doesn't mean that you won't eventually be able to use it against them. Okay, so number 2 thing that they do on a very regular basis is lie. The third thing they try to do a lot of is intimidation tactics. So what I mean by that is that they will constantly try to make you be afraid. So they intimidate you in all sorts of ways. You're afraid that they're going to hurt you. They're afraid they're going to expose you. You're afraid that they're going to take your kids. They're very, very, very good at figuring out what your weaknesses are, what means the most to you. And that's what they'll go for. So if you're a mother and you don't want to lose your kids, they'll say, I'm taking the kids and you'll never see your kids again. If you are dependent upon this person for support, they'll say, I'm going to take everything and leave you in the street. If you want money from this person, then they'll use that against you. So whatever they can use against you, they will, and they'll scare you into thinking like, oh my God, my life is going to be so terrible if I cross this person. And there's all different types of intimidation tactics that they use. Some are more violent than others. If they're more of a malignant type of narcissist, some of them are a little bit more stealth if they're like a covert narcissist. But, all narcissists use the same kinds of tactics. For the most part, gaslighting is definitely one, lying is definitely one as well, and intimidating you in some ways is one as well. And another thing that they often try to do is triangulate. This is where they get their flying monkeys involved, and they get you to believe that all these other people have lined up a side by side with them, supporting them. And if you cross this person or you come out and try to expose them in some way, then you're going to be the one that looks crazy, and you're going to be the one that looks insane, or you'll lose all your friends, because everybody believes that this person is absolutely wonderful. And so obviously you're the one that must be insane. So the term flying monkeys comes back from the Wizard of Oz, and it was when the Wicked Witch had her flying monkeys on her side. And that's what narcissists do. They all do it. They all try to make you think that they're like so close to all these other people. And so therefore you shouldn't come out and try to say anything bad about this person because everybody else thinks this person is amazing. These are just a few of the things that they do. If this is all sounding all too familiar to you, go ahead and give me a totally in the comments. And if you are dealing with these things with the narcissist, which I'm sure you are, make sure you check out my video on self-care when coping with a narcissist. I will drop a link to that below. You want to make sure that you're taking care of yourself when you're dealing with a narcissist. I'm sure all these things sound really familiar to you, but in the end, okay, great. What can you do about it? So here's the not so secret about narcissists. That is that they are actually the most scaredy cats on the planet. They have no sense of inner value. I've often said they're like the chocolate Easter bunnies that are hollow inside. They have no sense of internal value whatsoever. So they've got to go and get all of their sense of value from the external. And that's what we call narcissist supply. It's in the form of compliments, money, prestige, you know, whatever it is that they can get to get attention for themselves on the external. But the thing is, they're super afraid. So if you push back on them enough, they will back down. So what causes a narcissist to panic, to feel stunned? Number one, brutal honesty. They expect, because they're pathological liars, that most people lie too. They really just expect that everybody else is just as bad as they are. They don't understand what it's like to be a normal person. They've never been one, so they don't get that. They don't get that people out there actually have integrity. They understand the concept of it, but they just really don't believe that anybody else has it. So if you're just brutally honest with them, it kind of stuns them and they're not exactly sure what to do with that. So for example, like if they, you know, a covert narcissist is all often sick. That's one of the things that they do. They have this whole shtick that they're unwell in some way, they can't work or whatever it is. You know, there's always some reason to feel sorry for the covert narcissist. And so, you know, if one day they're super sick and then the next day they show up at something fun, something that they want to actually be involved in, because of course they don't want to miss out on getting attention for themselves, you know, just without any kind of sarcasm or attitude or whatever, just say, oh, I'm so surprised that you're here. You know, you said you were so sick yesterday. And you have to be careful, because if you say with any kind of tone whatsoever, they're like super sensitive. They can, you know, they can sense it no matter what level of sarcasm it is. They'll feel it, they'll sense it. Even if it's not there, they might think it's there. So just make sure you're really saying it like as if you're reporting the news. I always say, like, just the facts, ma'am, right? Just, oh, I'm surprised you're here. You know, you said you were so sick yesterday. They won't know what to do with that. So brutal honesty is number one. Okay, number two is pushing back. This is something that they don't expect, especially if you are used to giving in and acquiescing to whatever it is that they want. They will be really surprised, and it will make them panic if you push back against them. If they start to realize this person they thought they had total control over is no longer listening to everything that they do or doing everything that they say or buying into everything that they're selling, it will stun them and it will start to panic them a little bit, because they'll be going, what's going on here? Why is this person pushing back against me? Something like that. Okay. So that's number two. Okay, and number three is exposing them. They do not want to be exposed for any reason whatsoever. If you really want to throw a narcissist into panic mode, let them think that they're going to be exposed, or actually expose them. If they're flying monkeys, find out who they really are. Or if somebody that they respect gets to see some side of them that they don't want seen, then that's a really huge way to make a narcissist panic. So for example, in a mediation situation, if you know something about the narcissist that they don't want the other side to know, you know, you might subtly say like that fact is going to come out. In my world, it could be that the person has a sexually transmitted disease and they are a doctor in the community. They probably don't want the world to know that. So especially if they got it by cheating on you and everything else. So sometimes, you know, not going to court can be a huge motivator for a narcissist. It can really make them panic if they think that, you know, the world is going to see things about them that they have taken painstaking efforts to hide and make sure nobody else knows. So number three is exposing them.
Okay, and number 4 is losing control in any way. So remember what we talked about, that they're the most scared people on the planet. They're really like the bullies, you know. You know how in A Christmas Story, that old movie, that, you know, the little boy fought back against the bully and then the bully ended up running away. You know, you're really just figuring out what their level is, and they're doing the same thing to you, by the way. So every time you push back a little bit against them, they'll act up even more. They'll do more of their lying, more of their control tactics, more of their intimidation, more of their narcissistic rage. It will spurn them because they'll think, okay, I just need to clamp down a little bit harder against this person so that they'll behave and get back under my layer of control. Or they might start love bombing again and then devaluing, love bomb, devalue. They'll start, you know, doing this campaign of love bombing again because they're trying to get you back into their layer of control. They're panicking. So losing control is something that really sends them into a tizzy. The reason they do all the things that they do, gaslighting, manipulation, lying, all the things that I talked about at the beginning of this video, is because they're trying to assert control over you because they are so insecure underneath. And the way that you can make them panic is by having them lose some of that control. And, you know, just like if you have a 2-year-old that has a tantrum, they're conditioning the parents. It's like, okay, if I scream loud enough, if I have enough of a tantrum here, if I cry loud enough, then mommy and daddy will give me what I want. And if you give in, as a parent to that child, then they'll know next time I just need to scream louder, I just need to scream longer, and eventually they'll give in to what I want. So what the narcissist is doing is trying to figure out at what level do I need to act at to get this person back into my layer of control. And if you know, give into that, then they know I just need to be that much louder, that much more awful next time in order to get this person to come back to my layer of control. So if you really want to make a narcissist panic, let them realize that you're no longer buying in to that stuff. When they start losing control, that's when they super panic.